Kronos with a K. Kronos with a K. Says, I've been having problems with my radio and my transmitter not connecting on the Baby Ape and the Zorro. I've tried using a binding phrase, but it doesn't seem to work. What should my first steps be? You got the Zorro and the Baby Ape. And presumably you've got an ExpressLRS receiver. If both of them are, let's assume that you have flashed both of them with a matching binding phrase. And that's a big assumption because sometimes people have trouble accomplishing that. There are ways to bind ExpressLRS without a binding phrase. And some people feel that that's, thank you very much, Tiago Ramos, for a $5 super chat. Appreciate that. No super chats for Joshua. What? Appreciate you, Tiago Ramos. Some people prefer to bind ExpressLRS without a binding phrase. I don't feel that way. And here's why. If you use a binding phrase, well, number one, you probably need to get used to flashing your ExpressLRS hardware. When you receive a piece of ExpressLRS hardware, you don't know what firmware version is on it. And ExpressLRS 1 is not compatible with ExpressLRS 2, is not compatible with ExpressLRS 3. There really isn't any ExpressLRS 1.x hardware out there anymore, but they just did the shift between ExpressLRS 2.x and 3.x. They just released 3.0. So if you've got your module on 3.0, you're probably going to be flashing every receiver that you get at least once. More fundamentally, there's things you can do with ExpressLRS by flashing it that you won't get access to if you just bind them using the no flashing method. Like, for example, I've got all my ExpressLRS receivers set up so that when they go into Wi-Fi mode, they connect to a Wi-Fi network that I have at my house. Look here, I have at my house a Wi-Fi network named ELRS, and it is explicitly for all my ExpressLRS hardware. Now, I realize that this is a little kooky and not everybody's going to do this, but when my ExpressLRS hardware powers up, it connects, if it goes into Wi-Fi mode, it connects to that network, and then I can flash it from any computer on my home network. That's kind of cool, isn't it? Isn't that kind of cool? This kind of thing requires you to, well, I guess you could do it through the web interface. My point is that by flashing the receivers, they instantly get set up with all my settings. And then the other advantage of the binding phrase, and this is the big one, I know that all of my ExpressLRS hardware is flashed with my binding phrase, okay? And because of that, when I change modules for any reason, all I have to do is put my binding phrase in the new module, and it's instantly bound to all of my ExpressLRS hardware. You know that situation where maybe you get a new radio or you get a different module, and you have to rebind everything? Nope. And in fact, I have multiple modules. Now, that's a little bit specific to me because I'm a creator, a professional, and so I have a lot of hardware. Not everybody's in that situation. I just think that if you use ExpressLRS, you should get in the habit of the very first thing you do when you get a new piece of hardware is you flash it. It takes you 5 minutes, it's done, and then you're ready to go. Fair enough. So I'm going to assume, going back to this question from Kronos, I'm going to assume that you flash them and they have a matching binding phrase. At that point, let's then ask the question, what could cause them not to bind together? And there are two main things I can think of. One is, if one of them is ExpressLRS 2.x and one is ExpressLRS 3.x, they won't bind. Now, you flashed them, so presumably you know that. And number two, if you have model match enabled, and you could just go look in the Lua script and see whether model match is enabled or not, then they will not connect unless they have a matching model ID, which is a whole complicated thing that we won't go into. But those are the two main things that would cause them not to bind, in my opinion. By the way, if all you want to do is enter a binding phrase, in ExpressLRS 3.0, you can enter the binding phrase through the web interface. So you actually don't need to reflash it to change the binding phrase. However, I like to just flash it so I know all the settings are the same. So, I wish, this is a little unrelated, but I would like to say, ExpressLRS devs, continuing in my tradition of me trying to make feature requests by shouting at devs on a live stream instead of going through official channels. ExpressLRS devs, it occurred to me, hang on a second, it occurred to me that you have the option. So here's all these options, right? And you can go standard mode or you can go manual mode. And manual mode lets you manually put in these. I assume manual mode lets you put in these options, but with like a text file. Devs, can you make it so that when I click here, it auto-fills the correct text for these options here? So however this is set up in the graphical section, when I click to manual, boom, there's that text. Because what that would let me do is copy paste this text. And then I could have several different files for different ways that I set up receivers. And then I could just know, boom, this is my setup for my receivers, done. Right? As opposed to having to go, oh, what binding phrase was I using? Or what, I don't want to remember all this. Was it know-it-all? Was it FPV know-it-all? I don't care. Can you just auto-populate this for me? That'd be cool. Anyway. We'll see if that happens. Somebody tell a dev I was talking about them. Okay.